It was during one night when I'd just arrived with a delivery of petrol for the generators. We were just shunting them into their siding when suddenly there was a scream from one of the nearby sheds. The front doors flew open, and out came the young engineer, badly burnt. Before anyone could ask him what had happened, something big puffed out of the sheds in a cloud of steam. It was a monstrous-looking scrap engine. It had no face, just a rusty smokebox door. Its boiler and cab were from an A1, mounted crudely atop an 9F's chassis, pulling a rusty old tender behind it. Steam hissed and smoke billowed from its funnel and from its cab. It would seem to glow bright yellow. The hissing was pained, and at times it sounded like 3 engines puffing at once. The monstrous creation slowly puffed its way down the siding before coming to a stop on the points, when its corroded suspension springs finally snapped. When the paramedics and the police arrived, they asked the engineer what he'd been doing. He said he was trying to create a new engine that could revitalize steam on the mainland. He'd gotten a hold of the engine parts from the ironworks, using the place as a parts shop where he could scrounge up all the spare parts he could ever want. During his days off, he would sneak into the yard and steal more engine parts to complete his project. He managed to steal the complete scrap engine using a heavy hauler lorry owned by his brother, Frederick Packard, father to Jenny Packard, in fact. To hide his work, as he knew that all this scrap would be very valuable, he stole and altered receipts from the office to make it seem like no scrap engines had ever been delivered or engines arrived with fewer parts. He'd been in the process of test firing his creation when the water glass burst, spraying scalding steam and water all over him. His goals were terrible and foolish, and for his trouble he would endure many painful surgeries that would end up costing him the use of one of his hands and a lifetime of horrible scars. I sat nearby so I could provide my testimony. During this time, the scrap engine made many terrible noises as it cooled down. Sometimes it was a murmur, other times it sounded like screams. The screams of 3 voices calling out for their end to come. The mess of engine parts was soon dragged away and cut up. But it seems that isn't the end. Workers would say that they heard the sound of hissing and clanking around the yard during the night shift, like the sound of 3 engines puffing at once, but it wasn't just puffing sounds. Voices crying out for the end to return. That their rest had become disrupted. I am dead. Awaken me, or let me rest, for I was, and I am. The voices would cry. It seems that engineer, and using whole parts of deceased engines, disrupted their rest, and now they roam the smelter's yard seeking for their end to come. But it never will.